Good morning. My name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here. If you're looking up here and you're thinking, man, where's the podium or whatever, and where's all the stuff, it's a little bit of a different morning here this morning. We're calling it dinner theater. I will get to that in a minute, but since there's a bunch of us here, I thought we'd at least start the dinner part. We don't have dinner, but we have dessert. So if the host could bring forward some dessert for everybody this morning, we're going to start with that. And while they're passing out dessert, I have a couple quick things to let you know about it. I'm really excited this week. I don't know if any of you are excited with me, but I am so excited about Wednesday morning. Is anybody else with me about that? I'm really excited about Wednesday morning because all the election stuff will be done. I didn't know that was going to be that much an applause, but yes, all right, great, you're with me. Okay, so I'm really excited about that because I think that's just going to be great. It's just been so long, and I'm happy to be done with it all. But there's something I want to ask of you. Wednesday morning is going to come this week, and there's going to be something that's going to happen. You're going to wake up, and either you're going to be like thanking God, or you're going to be praying to God, right? Like it's going to be one of those two things that's going to happen on Wednesday morning. And you probably have seen them around town, but we've been handing out these yard signs with underdogs and how you have God's vote here at RCC. They've been awesome. They've been fun. A lot of fun questions have come out of them. But here's the thought. If you put political signs up and chose not to grab one of those because we asked you not to put them next to any political signs, good for you for doing that and respecting that. But on Wednesday morning, maybe you could take those political signs down, no matter who won or lost, and you could just put out there a sign that talks about who you really do trust in. Because obviously we don't really trust in either of these people or any of these people to lead us. We trust in God to lead us, and that'd be a fun way to do that. So that's the case. If you want to grab one of those on your way out, you can grab one of those on the way out. In addition to that, this morning, it's a little different. We're having some fun. Our Underdog story this weekend, this true story from thousands of years ago, is on a book called Esther, all about this woman named Esther. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I've never felt like this story gets what it deserves for like credit and the time that it deserves to really be told. So this morning, we are going to dive deep into the story of Esther, hence the dinner theater. And so with that being the case, we're going to get started in just a minute. Relax, get your cookies and enjoy those and settle in for a story. We'll get started in just a minute. Story starts with a party, okay? Now, this just is not any sort of party. This is a party that King Xerxes, the ruler of this land, makes last for 180 days. He is 3 years into his reign, and he decides he is going to make a display of the pomp and splendor of his kingdom. So 180 days, all throughout his kingdom, there is a party going on. A celebration of what they've accomplished. Now that party goes on and on for all those 180 days, but nearing the end of the party, King Xerxes, this guy who's in charge, it's 3 years in, he's really loving the fact that things are going so well. He decides that he is going to throw another party, a 7-day feast held in the city that he rules from called Susa. There will be banquet upon banquet upon banquet with wine and good food and all the stuff that makes up a roaring good time. So that's what he does. He puts on this roaring good time of all kinds of fun and all kinds of people, whether you're rich or poor, no matter who you are invited to this party, and it is a blast. It is so enjoyable for every person who's there, especially King Xerxes. 7 days go on and on and on, and then they get to the final of the 7 days. And on that final of the 7th day, King Xerxes, he is just loving life at this point, enjoying everything, having plenty to drink. He's at the highest of high points, and he decides, you know what? There is only one thing that could make this party any better. So, with his good old boys, all of his nobles all around him, he decides that he is going to top off the party in the only way he knows how that would make it enjoyable for everybody. He sends word through one of his servants to his queen, Queen Vashti. He asks her to come out to where him and his friends are, his nobles, and to parade around with her royal crown on her head so that everybody can feast their eyes on how beautiful she is. He's super excited. He can't wait. He can't wait to show all of his friends this beautiful woman that he calls his queen. And as that servant comes back from delivering that message, there's this look on his face, I assume. He comes back pretty upset that he has to deliver the news because he walks up to the king and says, "She's not coming." "What? She's not coming? What are you talking about? I'm the king. I say come, she comes." And the servant says, "No, she said no. She said no." And the king, he's beside himself. How could this queen of mine say no to me? I am the king. I say do something, you do it. How can this stand? And he's frustrated and beside himself. And the nobles, all the people around him, all of his friends are looking at this and thinking, oh no, this can't stand. This can't be the case, because if she says no to you, our wives are going to say no to us, and that's not good. That's a terrible thing. We have to do something about that. And so they convince the king. They say to the king, you need to get rid of this situation. You need to make it right. You need to send out a decree to all of the regions you rule over and tell them that the wife must listen to the husband and must respect. And when he says jump, she says how high and whatever, all that stuff. And so he does. He sends out the decree. And in doing so, he removes his queen Vashti. Vashti is gone. So now, to really understand these events, what's needed is some background, some history. This King Xerxes is ruling over this vast kingdom, and within his kingdom, and even within his city of Susa, are this group of people. This group of people who had been conquered and then dispersed all over the region. This group of people we know as the Jews, this Jewish nation. They'd been dispersed all throughout the land, and there were two particular Jews in this land, this city, that are very pertinent to our story this morning. One of those is named Mordecai. And the other is his cousin, who he adopted at a young age because her parents died when she was very young. He became a father figure to her. Her name is Esther. And Esther was beautiful. Now, King Xerxes, after the party, the roaring party is over, finds himself settling into life as is, and realizes very quickly that his queen is missing. She's gone. He misses her. His aides, they take note of this. They realize that he's beginning to put on this sad face, so to speak, and you don't want a sad king. You don't want an unhappy king, because unhappy kings do mean things. So they hatch a plan. They say to the king, hey, you know what? We are going to have the very first The Bachelor forever right here. It's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to send out word all over the kingdom, and what we're going to do is find all of the most beautiful women that we can find. And then we're going to bring them to you, and we're going to give them like 6 months of beauty treatments, and then they will parade before you, and you will choose your queen. And King Xerxes says, yeah, that's a good idea. I like this idea. And so he sends them off. He sends them off to find those women and do so. And so they find women from all over, these young, beautiful women, to bring to King Xerxes. One of those women is Esther. When Mordecai speaks with Esther about her going to this competition of sorts, he gives her some advice. He says two things. Number one, listen to the aides, the people that are helping you, because they know what the king wants, and so listen to them and do as they say, and you'll do well. And the second bit of advice is just as important, if not more so. He tells her, don't tell anybody what your nationality is. Keep that a secret. So, this happens. Esther comes to the palace, the royal palace, goes through the 6 months of beauty treatments, and finally comes her day where she goes before the king. And he is so taken by her that he takes the royal crown, places it on her head, and makes her Queen Esther. Now, shortly after this happens, a few other developments are important to our story. The first one is this, that Mordecai, he begins to grow and find new positions and advance in the kingdom. And in doing so, he finds a position that's within the palace. And as he's there, he actually overhears a couple of people plotting to assassinate King Xerxes. Being the good man that he is, he sends word to Queen Esther. She informs the king. And the king then gets rid of this problem and saves his life. So Mordecai, at this moment, early on in Esther's reign as queen, Mordecai saves the king's life. At the same time, there's this other individual, this man named Haman, who has been climbing the social ladder as high as he can possibly go. It is his desire to be as high as possible within this kingdom, as high as possible as in number 2, only second to the king himself. And really, at this point in our story, he's succeeded. There comes a point where the king says, Haman, I am making you my highest noble, and everyone will give you the respect that you deserve. As you go out into the kingdom, people will bow to you. People will show you respect. And Haman loves it. He eats it up. He's so thrilled, so excited. So he parades himself around the kingdom, around the palace of Susa. And as he does, these people, they bow to him. They show him respect. He loves it. It is so good. It's everything he ever dreamed of, except there's this one guy. This one guy who just won't do a thing. He won't bow. He won't show respect. He won't do what he's supposed to do. In no way, shape, or form. And so in doing so, he just makes Haman really upset, really frustrated, really angry. He's beside himself. He's thinking, how can you not bow? The king says so. You do what the king says. Why are you not listening? This man's name was Mordecai. And Mordecai, being a Jew, would not bow to a noble like him. Wouldn't show respect to someone other than God in that way. This infuriates Haman to no end. He goes back home to his wife and friends, and they tell him, you have to know that this is not just Mordecai that this is an issue with. There is an entire nationality of people who will refuse to bow to you. So maybe you could fix it by getting rid of Mordecai, but really, the issue is everybody that's in that nationality. So you should do something about it. Haman then, in that moment, has this seed of an idea that begins to sprout. It's sadistic, it's terrible. It comes to fruition when he goes to the king and he says to the king, King, do you know that there is this group of people who refuse to obey your decree? Did you know that? King, you cannot let this stand. This cannot be the case. You cannot let them disobey your direct order. They're not bowing to me. This is terrible. There's an entire nationality, a whole group of people that we have conquered that are refusing to give you the respect that you deserve. What are you going to do about it? You can't let that stand, can you? The king's like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to let them disobey me. I'm king. I say what I want, they do it. This is how it should be. And they're not, so I'm going to get rid of them. Haman hatches a plan. He says, okay, a year from now, just about a year from now, on March 7th, what we will do, and you can send this out as the decree, king, we will gather them all up and we will annihilate them. We will get rid of them. It'll be a law that on this day you can get rid of them, and when you do, you can take all of their possessions. It'll be plunder for your taking. And this is how we will make this happen. The king thinks it's a great idea. Takes his ring off, gives it to Haman to sign the decree with. It's written up in all the different languages, sent out on fast horses, the king's messenger horses, to all the different kingdoms that he rules over. And everybody finds out about it, including Mordecai. And when he finds out, his heart sinks. He rips his clothes. He finds his way to the palace gates, puts sackcloth on, and there he sits, mourning. Esther finds out that Mordecai is out at the palace gates mourning, and she doesn't understand. She's the one who hasn't heard about this decree of the king. So she sends out a messenger with clothes for him to change into and says, "Come on, buck up. Let's go. Get in these clothes. We can't have you mourning out here, Mordecai." But Mordecai refuses, and there's a few different rounds of this that go on until finally Mordecai informs Esther through a servant. He says to her that this is what's going down. This is what's happening. They're going to get rid of all of the Jews. And don't think for a second that you will remain out of this. Maybe your nationality has been hidden, but if you don't do something, something's going to happen to you too. And she says, "But you don't understand. You don't understand, Mordecai. I can't do anything if I go before the king unsummoned. And I haven't been called before the king for 30 days. Understand this, Mordecai. I haven't been called for 30 days. If I go before the king unsummoned, I'm dead. They kill me. The only way around it is if the king extends mercy, if he extends his golden scepter toward me. You are telling me or asking me to go to my death." Mordecai responds to this. This is what he says. "If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this." Just such a time as this. I wonder how many times those words rattled around in Esther's brain as she thought about whether or not to act, whether or not to do something about it. Just such a time as this. Am I called to do something? Should I act? Should I save myself? Should I put myself in harm's way for the good of all of these people? What should I do? Esther, she had to make a choice. So finally, as she does so, she gets the courage up and she invites her maids and servants and all of her people that are with her to come close to her and be in her area, wherever she is in the palace, and says to them, "We're going to do something." And she sends word to Mordecai to do the same thing. This is what she asks of Mordecai. She says this, "Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die." Esther and Mordecai and all the people that are gathered around, they do this thing. They fast. They appeal to this authority that's higher than they are. This authority that has kept the Jewish nation alive and moving forward since its existence. They fast. They appeal. And on the third day, Esther gets up. She gets up, she puts on her royal robes. She gets herself prepared. She walks to where the king is in the king's court. They open the doors. She walks through them. And there, down the distance, is King Xerxes. And in that moment, I can't imagine what's going through her mind, but surely she's thinking, "This is it. I'm done. I did what I could, but my life is now finished." But then, King Xerxes takes that golden scepter, raises it up, and points toward her and pardons her. And he calls her over toward him. They come right close, and he says to Esther, "Esther, what is it? What can I do for you? I will give you anything you want, even up to half of my kingdom." Esther says to King Xerxes, she says, "If it pleases the king, I'd like to invite you to a banquet, a party. Come with me, I prepared it. And I'd love for you to come as well as your highest noble Haman. Bring him along, and the three of us will enjoy a banquet together. And so they go off to this banquet right away. Immediately he leaves, and they're excited about it. They enjoy themselves. And while they're there, King Xerxes eventually, later on into the banquet, he asks Esther, okay, I'm here. What would you have me do? What would you like? What can I do for you, Esther? I'll give it to you, even up to half of my kingdom. But Esther, she says, King Xerxes, forgive me, but please let me prepare for you a second banquet tomorrow. And at that second banquet, I will tell you exactly what is going on. I'll give you all the information and tell you what this is all about. So the king agrees. And the king and Haman and Esther depart. Haman goes back to his home, and man, this guy is flying high. He's so excited, so happy. He just had dinner, a banquet with Queen Esther and the king. He was like the ultimate third wheel of all time. It was amazing. He was so excited about this, right? He is so honored. He's so thrilled, and he goes back to his home, and he tells his wife, man, this is so fantastic. The queen loves me. The king loves me. I am enjoying this. Everybody bows to me. This has been the most amazing day of my life. I love my life, except for that blasted Mordecai. Man, I can't even enjoy this right now. I can't even enjoy it because I know he won't bow to me. That's terrible. It's frustrating. I'm angry. I can't get what I want. And so his wife and his friends, they say to him, hey, you're never going to be happy unless you get rid of this Mordecai. And look, the queen and the king both love you. You are the best third wheel. It was awesome. You're telling us about it. Go and prepare a way to get rid of Mordecai. Set up a pole to hang him on. Haman thinks this is a great idea. I mean, how could this not go wrong? I'll go and talk to the king in the morning. He loves me. This is great. Of course he's going to get me what I want. While this is happening, in the middle of the night, King Xerxes had gone home, and he was having a very difficult time sleeping. Restless through the night, couldn't sleep. And so finally he calls for one of his servants to bring the book of the history of his kingdom and read it so he can enjoy some of the good things that have happened and fall asleep to him reading that. And the servant opens up the page and he begins to read, and he reads this story. The story of a man named Mordecai who had once saved the king from an assassination attempt. And as the story is being read, King Xerxes finally asks the question, well, has anything ever been done to honor this man who saved my life? And the servant responds, no, nothing. At that moment, in walks Haman, really excited to get rid of Mordecai. And the king, he asks Haman, what would you have me do for this man who has given me so much honor and who I would like to honor in a tremendous way? And Haman's thinking, all right, this is good. Who would he like to honor other than me? So he pulls out no stops. He says, bring the horse from your stable, the one you've ridden on before with your royal insignia on it. Have him ride on that, and then that's not nearly all. Then put a royal robe on him, one the king himself has worn, so that everybody can see just how amazing the king lavishes the people who honor him. And then in addition to that, I'm not done yet. The final thing, because I'm thinking it's for me, that you should do is this. You should have a high noble, not me, someone else, hold on to the horse and parade him around the town and say, this is what the king does for those who honor him. And the king loves this idea. It's great. Sounds fantastic. And he says, yes, go and do that for Mordecai. Oh. And Haman is so frustrated by this. He's distraught. But he goes and he does as the king commands. Takes the horse, has Mordecai ride on it with the royal robe, takes him around town and said, this is what the king does for those who honor him. When he finally finishes, he's dejected, humiliated, so angry about the whole situation, finds himself back at home with his wife and his friends, and they say, you got to give this up. This is never going to go well for you. You got to stop. And at that very moment, horses show up to take Haman away to the banquet. And he ends up at the banquet. And there they sit, enjoying themselves. And King Xerxes finally again asks Queen Esther, what would you like? What is all this about? I will give it to you, even up to half my kingdom. And finally, Esther says this: if I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king. Hearing this, the king's distraught. He asks Esther, who in the world would do such a terrible thing to the people of my queen? Why is this happening? Who is it? And Queen Esther, she raises her hand and points across the table and says, Haman has done this. Haman is the one who has done this to us. And the king, distraught about it, stands up. He runs outside of the palace to the palace garden and tries to figure out what to do. And while he's out, Haman begins to plead for his life with Esther, do whatever he can to let her subside this thing in some possible way. And there she sits on the couch, sitting there on the couch, and the Haman, as he sees this and is frustrated and trying to plead for his life, falls on the couch, so beside himself, trying to win back her favor. And the king, at this very moment, comes in and sees this. Haman laying on the couch with Esther, saying, are you kidding me? Will you even assault my wife, this queen, in front of me, in my very presence? And a black hood is placed over the top of Haman's head, signaling his doom. Isn't that an awesome story? Hopefully you've had breakfast. If you haven't, there's donuts downstairs. We've had our after breakfast dessert for our dinner theater here. Now we're having after dessert mints. So those are going to be brought forward so you can enjoy those after dinner mints. While that's happening, I want to give you an insight into the ending of this story. It's kind of like when you finish a movie and they roll the credits and show pictures of people and what happens to them. This is what happens in the rest of the story. Haman is removed the same way he intended to get rid of Mordecai. In addition to that, the king allows Mordecai and Esther to write another decree because he can't go back on the decree that he had written, but he writes a decree that allows the Jewish nation to defend themselves against anybody who would take their lives. And so that's what they do. They defend themselves as best as they can. And in fact, because of this, the Jewish nation ends up more powerful instead of less. And they end up winning out in these circumstances. Esther remains queen, and Mordecai rises higher and higher and higher within the kingdom and does this fantastic job and becomes known as this high man in the Jewish history. I love this story. I think it has more drama than your primetime TV show. I think it's a little bit better than The Bachelor. But it's so much good stuff in there. It's so thrilling. You can read it and be on the edge of your seat. And I asked myself as I was thinking about this story this week, why? Why is it such a great story? And for me, I think it boils down to one particular reason. There's a moment in this story when Queen Esther, she has to choose. Mordecai says, perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. And in that moment, she has to choose. Is she going to protect herself? Or is she going to put herself in harm's way and do what's best for all of these people? What is she going to do? It reminds me of this other story, one that I think most of us are very familiar with. And that story is the story of a man named Jesus, who had no need to enter this world, no need to go through any of the pain involved in being here. And yet, in spite of all of that, chose to enter, put himself in harm's way for the good of all of us. And in doing so, dying on the cross, overcoming death, and giving us the ability to do the same thing, to have new life and live a different life and be changed by him. It's a similar sort of choice. Esther had to make that choice. Jesus had to make that choice. What about you? What about you? Do you have to make that choice? I know sometimes life can just keep on going day after day after day, and we wonder, why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? And maybe, just maybe, someone needs to come along and ask us a question. To ask us, or to tell us, perhaps you have your job for just such a time as this. Perhaps you met that person for just such a time as this. Perhaps you found out that this one couple is struggling so much for just such a time as this. Perhaps you are right where you are for just such a time as this. Where are you right now in your life? Are you struggling? Are you excited about what's next? Are you feeling like there's no purpose? Where are you? Why? Why are you there? Maybe, perhaps, you're there for a reason. Perhaps you can be used by God too. Perhaps you can put your own needs aside for a short bit or a long bit and do something for other people that need it. Perhaps you can put yourself in a situation that's a little risky, but man, it's going to do something good for some people. Perhaps you are right where you are for just such a time as this. What if? And what would change about your life if you acted like it? And ask God to lead you in it. That's how I'm going to close. I'm going to close knowing that we're all underdogs, like our series says, and we need God's help. And when we take on causes, take on desires to help people, it's an underdog process. But with God's help, he can show us a way. He can work through it. He can lead us. So if you'd like that prayed for yourself, where you can ask yourself, why am I here, and what's my purpose in it? And then, God, can you lead me through it? Why don't you pray along with me these words, and we'll ask God to bless us in that way. Would you pray with me? Dear God, thank you. Thank you for the story of Esther, of this woman who relied on you and stepped out in this amazing way to serve you for the benefit of all those people. Thank you for that example and the amazing story that it is. It's a true story. But in addition to that, God, thank you for your son, who in spite of not needing to, chose to come and live a life that resulted in so much pain of dying on the cross. But then, in doing so, made it possible for us to have new life because he beat the grave. God, as we know that to be true for us, and if we've accepted that, awesome, thank you. Thank you for that. But then help us to live like that. Help us to see why we are where we are and how we can be there for a purpose. Help us to see that purpose and give us the courage to act on it. We're so grateful for you, and we know that you will meet us there. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.